country in Europe's northwest. Unexpectedly diverse and always full of surprises. Multifaceted, with a broad horizon and world-famous culture. Characterized by water and new land on what was once the seabed. The Netherlands is full of life and dramatic stories. All in all, a great little country. Neither water nor land. The Wadden Sea characterizes the coastline of the Netherlands north. A sea that never rests. A nature reserve of superlatives. A resting place for millions of birds, and since 2009, UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's the enormous abundance of food that attracts so much life. The Wadden Sea is one of the world's most fertile natural landscapes. Hardly any other country in Europe is so strongly connected to the sea as the Netherlands. Almost half of the country lies below sea level. Without protection, it would be completely flooded by the North Sea. Let's take the province of Flevoland, with its 2,500 square kilometers. Up until the middle of the 20th century, it was no more than a seabed covered in water. Here, the Dutch created the world's largest artificial landmass. The New Land National Park covers around 12% of the man-made region. It has its core in the Oostvaardersplassen Nature Reserve. In the course of time, this swamp-like area would eventually become overgrown. As a prevention, ungulates have been employed. One of Europe's largest herds of wild horses, roughly 400 animals. Horses originally inhabited the steppes. The vast meadows are a perfect choice for them. They are comics, a breed similar to the extinct ancient European horses known as tarpans. After a roughly 11-month gestation, the foals are born between March and April. They rapidly integrate into the herd. Each mare has one foal and suckles it until it starts to enjoy plant-based food. The horses have been helping to keep the landscape of Oostvaardersplassen free of reeds, bushes and trees since the early 1990s. They've never seen a stable. In the vicinity of the horses, a vixen has established her territory. Her pups are 3 to 4 weeks old. They only recently left the underground burrow for the very first time to discover the outside world. They are so tiny, each of them fits easily into the palm of a hand. It will take a few more weeks until the brown baby fur is replaced by the typical red fox colour scheme of their mother. A vixen gives birth to between 3 and 7 pups. They are still totally dependent on their mother and would have no chance of survival should something happen to her. But the experienced female has chosen her den very carefully, far away from the wild horses. In May, the stallions intimidate their rivals by stamping their hooves emphatically. Shortly after the foals are born, the mares are already in heat and ready to mate. Short fights decide the dominance within the herd. When the hierarchy is clarified, peace is quickly reinstated. Once part of the seabed, Oostvaarder's Plassen vividly illustrates just how Mother Nature can also benefit from land reclamation, if allowed to do so. Sunrise over the West Frisian Islands, the most westerly of all North Sea islands. The Dutch are in their element when just mentioning the seaside. Year after year, thousands of holidaymakers head for the beaches. Between the Wadden Sea and the North Sea, 5 main islands are connected like a string of pearls. The one in the middle, Terschelling, boasts the highest and most beautiful dunes. As well as 30 kilometers of sandy beach. The island is only sparsely populated with enough space for animals. An oyster catcher observes his surroundings carefully. After all, he has something very precious to protect. The distinctive birds are typical of the North Sea coast. The wide horizon and the abundance of nature are the outstanding features of the island and its roughly 80 square kilometers. Terschelling provides around 60 bird species with perfect breeding grounds. Seagulls, of course, are expected everywhere along the coast. Less so the birds in the background. Spoonbills have been breeding on the island since 1962. The feathered bonnet is especially resplendent during the breeding season. It's fairly obvious why spoonbills are called spoonbills. The conspicuously coloured throat pouch is also typical of the season. Their nests are not exactly architectural masterpieces, but the birds still carefully maintain them as if they were. Spoonbills tend to breed in the immediate vicinity of seagulls, as they are known to be the perfect alarm system. Marsh harriers have a wide food spectrum, which also includes other birds' chicks. But not today. While seagulls are fledged after approximately 6 weeks, spoonbills require around 9. Regular flight muscle training consumes energy, and only those who intensively beg for it receive it. There are about 150 breeding couples on Terschelling, and all of them are in stress. The parents feed their young with a regurgitated, nutritious gruel. The vehemence of the young birds is torturous. So, a little rest is very much deserved. But it can't be helped. Until the little ones are ready to leave the nest, the parents will have to fetch food on countless occasions. The dunes are the island's natural protection, held together by the roots of the marram grasses. But at times, when storms persevere, this protective wall is destroyed by the combined forces of wind and water. Often enough, destructive and violent storms begin with a harmless, slight breeze. On Terschelling, but also on the islands of Ameland, Vlieland, Schiermonnikoog or Texel. A stiff breeze is accepted as an everyday occurrence by the Dutch. But should the stiff breeze intensify, we have a storm on our hands. A storm that attacks the natural protective wall and sweeps away countless tons of sand, causing the dunes to lose substance. The worst-case scenario is when the final climax follows, a hurricane. Driven by winds of up to 130 kilometers per hour and an enormously destructive power. When beaches and freshly planted dune areas disappear, both the damage and the costs are of huge dimensions. But all of this is nothing when compared to the flood disaster of 1953, the worst North Sea storm surge of the 20th century. Almost 2,000 square kilometers of land were destroyed, and nearly 2,000 people died in the Netherlands alone. More than 70,000 lost their livelihoods, had to be relocated and evacuated. Consequentially, the Dutch built state-of-the-art flood barriers, like the one at the Oosterschelde, south of Rotterdam. Whenever there is a storm surge, the floodgates close and seal off the hinterland. In the north, the final dike, 32 kilometers in length, separates the North Sea from the IJsselmeer and shields the province of Flevoland from storm flooding. The Dutch have mastered the art of controlling water for a long time, as is the case in the town of Enkhuizen. Here, people like to cross the city by boat or by simply swimming. Life without water? Unthinkable. Not only the canals, but also the more than 1,000 windmills are typical of the Netherlands. Up until 100 years ago, they used to pump the water from the lowlands back to the rivers behind the dykes. The wind then played a hand in keeping the land dry. Today, the fertile soils are areas of cultivation for the national flower, the tulip. As is also the case in Flevoland province. It has less to do with the flower blooms, rather with the bulbs that are exported all over the world, some 4,000 different varieties. Monocultures as far as the eye can see, areas lost by nature and what was once the seabed. Where the North Sea still finds its own way, seals gather in face of the rising tide. The same goes for the Dollard, a bay in the northeast, close to the German border. For their day out on land, they only use this particular section, on the Dutch side. After carrying for 11 months, the females give birth in July. Mother and child recognize one another by their individual scent. This is important for life among seals. Distemper ravaged the North Sea coast in the late 1980s. 3,000 seals survived in the Netherlands, and the population has been recovering ever since. Today, there are more than 7,000 animals. The howlers are between several days and 2 weeks old. Seal milk contains 45% fat. On a diet of concentrated feed, the little ones gain roughly 300 grams per day. 5 weeks and they are weaned. All this with modern windmills as a backdrop. Tempers flare when things get too close for comfort. The disputes may certainly look harmless, but they do leave their marks. Seals are predators with strong claws and some very impressive dentures. At ebb tide, the animals retreat back into the water. A relaxing mudslide. But the Wadden Sea has its downsides and can quickly become a fatal trap. The youngster bravely struggles against the silt, but its strength is waning. His mother eggs him on as good as she can. The poor animal is stuck in a dangerous situation. The omnivorous seagull is well aware of its plight. But then, it defies fate. And this time, it's a happy end in the Wadden Sea. Around 170 kilometers west of the Dollard is the lighthouse of Ameland. The island is a favorite with the marsh harriers. Regularly, they go searching for food, not for themselves, but for them. The largest chick is 10 days old, and the youngest just 5. Over 30 pairs are breeding on Ameland. Disputes regarding food are the norm. The number of harriers nesting on the 60 square kilometre island has been stable for many years, an indication that the animals are on the right path. Rats pose a huge threat to the islands. They are devastating for all ground-nesting birds. Fortunately, the marsh harriers are now challenging their decimation. Several times a day, the harriers carry food to the nest, followed by a furious fight between the unequally sized chicks. Parents remain on the sidelines and let things take their course. Competition between the siblings is always fierce, and it's always over just one thing: food. It's doubtful whether the younger one will survive. On Ameland, researchers attempt to discover more about the birds, just how many marsh harriers breed on the island, and how they're developing. Every year, Johan Kroll and his assistant head for the harriers' breeding grounds. Once there, they count the chicks, attach rings to them, and accumulate a wide variety of data.
Ja, rustig. Dat is echt een goede felle kerel.
With more than 30 years of experience in dealing with marsh harriers, the chicks couldn't be in better hands than Johan's.
Millimeter, dus een mannetje.
72.
The different body measurements reveal just how the birds develop. The young male's data are painstakingly recorded.
74 is ook een man. 394.
Johan has been at the forefront since bird of prey conservation was prioritized on Ameland in the late 1980s. The female is understandably anxious about her offspring, but Johan has everything under control.
Gewicht. 550. Precies genoeg.
550 grams, the ideal weight of a 4-week-old male.
Uh, 240.
The primary feathers are 240 millimeters long.
Nou, weer een mooie kikkerdief.
The marsh harriers on Ameland are developing wonderfully. But they are not alone. In Oostvaardersplassen, another bird of prey has also recovered significantly. White-tailed eagles were off the radar for a long time. In 2006, they came back. They are effective hunters, but not altogether flawless. The red foxes benefit from this. The cubs are hungry and still keep their mother on the move. On one of her forays, she came across an unusual treat. A big, fat carp. A white-tailed eagle must have dropped it. A pleasant fish aroma is in the air. For the very first time, some of the pups appear interested in solid food. But mother's milk is still the best, according to the little ones. The pups have grown significantly. The mother now only nurses them in a standing position. Patiently, she endures the goings-on beneath her stomach, 4 to 5 times a day. When the milk bar is closed, the young foxes just go out to play. This promotes coordination, strengthens team spirit, and is a lot of fun as well. Just another 6 weeks, and the pups will no longer require their mother's care. In the Netherlands, just as in Germany and Denmark, shrimp fishing has a long tradition. Captain Johan Rispens is en route to his fishing grounds. Around 200 Dutch fishermen have a shrimp fishing license. There used to be many more, but the North Sea has to be protected from overfishing. Shrimp cutters are regularly followed by whole flocks of birds. The sediment churned up by the nets brings food to the surface, a veritable feast for the seagulls. Captain Rispens is satisfied. His team hauls in the beam trawl, which has been especially designed to catch North Sea prawns. The yield in the shallow mudflats is particularly effective in the summer months. Once caught, the prawns are carefully washed. Modern sorting machinery separates the crustaceans from the bycatch. The prawns, also known as crevettes or shrimps, turn their typical red colour when boiled on board. Prawn fishermen are not destined to become wealthy, as catch volumes are negligible. Anything larger than a prawn lands in the bycatch separator and is then returned to the sea. Where the seagulls eagerly take up position. Numerous tidal channels meander through the island of Terschelling. This is the habitat of a special species of bird, the pied avocet. Being black and white, the name is presumably derived from the clothing of early advocates, or lawyers. The avocet's breeding places can be found on the banks of the tidal channels. The chicks are precocial, which means they wander around with their parents shortly after hatching. Avocets only stay a short few months on the Dutch coast and spend the cold season in Africa. First, they stir up the sediment with their legs, then comb through the water in search of something edible, an effective use of their unusual beaks. It doesn't look quite as elegant when the chicks try to follow suit. Avocets are quick-tempered. They always find something they can argue about with their neighbours. They breed in colonies. Yet sometimes they can't get along with one another. But they can't be without one another either. 3 months later, and they'll be on their way to Africa again. Meanwhile, something surprising has occurred on Ameland. The young marsh harriers have grown significantly. And even the smallest chick has survived. It energetically shields its food from the other siblings. The worrying condition it was in just 3 weeks ago now seems to be a thing of the past. To gain the respect of its siblings, the young marsh harrier really had to fight hard. Without food, it would not be here today. The harriers will soon have plucked out the very last of their white down feathers. Our straggler will no doubt need a little longer. Slowly but surely, the birds begin to resemble their parents. They don't miss a chance to train their flight muscles. It won't be long before they take off and fly. The population of marsh harriers on Army land is secure and will remain so in the future. The sun rises over the eastern mainland, some 100 kilometers from the coast. There is one type of landscape here that requires a sensitive hand. The soil is sandier in the eastern Netherlands and contains less nutrients than the coastal regions do, providing ideal conditions for heath growth. Around 40 large heathlands are protected by the government. By chewing at the young shoots, sheep ensure that the area remains free and is not overgrown with trees. Arjen Dahlhuisen has his sheep where he can see them, and his dogs under control. Border collie training takes years. The stock dogs are intelligent and immediately carry out numerous commands. You could say a dream team. As long as there is a heath in the Netherlands, there'll be a shepherd and his dogs. And sheep too, of course. With more than a massive 1,000 square kilometers, the Veluwe, the largest forest area of the Netherlands, also extends into the east. The Veluwe is home to both mouflon and red deer. In the past few years, the area has had to come to terms with little rainfall and large periods of drought, causing the plants to become parched. This should now be the rutting season for red deer, but at the moment, the mere thought of having to fight rivals is unbearable. It's far too hot. What could be more refreshing than a puddle? With their massive bodies, male red deer are especially susceptible to overheating. Waving his antlers is the only thing he can do at the moment. It's better to wait for cooler temperatures in regard to decisive rutting bouts. Along the coast, the hot spells are less extreme. In the autumn, vast flocks of migratory birds land here. They have returned from their breeding grounds in the Arctic. Many of them have flown for several thousand kilometers. If it were not for the productive Wadden Sea, they would starve to death. Ruddy turnstones, sanderlings, and many others recharge their batteries here. Hidden away in the kelp and mud, they can find snails, worms, and small crustaceans. The birds will spend the ensuing months here relaxing, and then fly back to their Arctic breeding grounds. Oyster catchers spend their entire lives on the Wadden Sea coast. But the spoonbills now set course for their wintering grounds in Africa. Late autumn in the forest. Strange life forms now populate the ground. While snails and mushrooms appear dressed to kill, others flaunt their skills to the hilt. It's rutting season for fallow deer. A stag proudly marks branches with his own irresistible scent. Almost all stags like to loudly announce their supposed superiority. It's little more than showing off, making sure that both the competition and the ladies see them. But the latter are impervious to the macho behavior of the males. All stags mark their own territories by scent and by making a rutting pit. It's highly inadvisable for anyone else to make his bed here. Tension rises. Then the time has arrived. With their average fighting weight of 80 kilograms, the animals develop enormous strength. A short break. But these two are not the sole adversaries in the forest. The stags are an even match, it's a draw. For now, at least. Winter, an increasingly rare guest in the Netherlands. Iced-over waters have become a seldom occurrence. Temperatures now are mostly far too mild. Yet this fellow is perfectly equipped for sub-zero temperatures. The otter. He's warmly encased in a dense fur made up of some 70,000 hairs per square centimetre. Although extinct by the end of the 1980s, today, thanks to a dedicated reintroduction program, around 400 otters now live in the Netherlands. In the comparatively small country, people have recognized just how important the preservation and restoration of natural habitats are. This includes the floodplains. They can store large amounts of water, thereby protecting the land from a devastating deluge. Not only nature benefits, but us too. This is especially true of the flood-plagued Netherlands. Back in the 1990s, floods of the Rhine and Meuse rivers caused much suffering. Along the coast, barrages and dykes help to prevent flooding. Inland, however, when rivers overflow, only one thing helps: space. An area that also benefits the beaver. Despite the rodent being eradicated in the Netherlands, like the otter and the white-tailed eagle, it has returned. In the meantime, around 600 beavers populate the country. Excellent prospects for Europe's largest rodent. The sub-zero temperatures last just a few days. With over 500 inhabitants per square kilometre, the Netherlands' population density is more than double that of neighbouring Germany, and one of the highest in Europe. Yet still the Dutch have managed to successfully share space with nature. This is more than worthy of imitation and a solid basis for the successful coexistence of nature and mankind. Let us hope, despite the threat of global warming and the associated rise in sea levels, that the Netherlands remain with us, and that the Wadden Sea, as it has been for millennia, remains a sea that never rests.